we left off with Pat. She finally made it out of jail. Okay, she finally got bail, and the good news was, don't need to apologize, come on in. The $50,000 bond was unsecured. If you're a good lawyer and my client's a low flight risk and she's got ties with the community, mama lives there, she has electric bills, she's been there forever, she takes care of patients in town. If I get her an unsecured bond, that means what? In the federal system, there is no Lucky's bail bonds down the street. The federal system sets the bond. That's why the young lady from pretrial services came in. There's no bondsman like in a state case. You ever go down to Harris County, you see all the bondsman people around there, and they give people a chance and say, pay 10% of the bond. And some people can't afford that. So some bondsmen I send them to, I'll say, let's make a deal. They'll pay 3% down, 3% next week, 3% at the end of the month. Can you get them out? You know, and there's nice bondsmen that'll do that. Now, if they run on their bond, they have to go look for them. That's the hard thing about, come on in. It was a long coffee line. Hand-delivered letter at the neighbor's house awaits her with a State Board of Nursing letterhead. Now, I'm just using this as an example. Generally, they're going to come certified in regular mail. When you get a certified letter from the nursing board, well, you don't need coffee. Your heart's already racing. Your eyes are already, oh man. Either I passed the board, and nowadays I know by computer, so this letter's not good. And that's why they always say keep your nursing address up to date, because some people, you didn't do all your continuing education, and then they forget, we get busy, and if you didn't have the right address, or you got divorced, or you just moved out, or whatever reason, and you don't have it, and you're deemed to have had notice because they said you should have kept your address up. That's just an aside for you. So please keep that address up to date. Hand-delivered letter at the neighbor's house awaits her where the state board says she's immediately suspended. Okay, this is one of the most, the hardest ones they hit you with. They say it's imminent jeopardy, immediate harm to the public, because we'll learn later this afternoon that the nursing board's job, as we all know, now that we've gone through so much nursing, we've heard it again and again, the nursing board is not there to protect you, they're to protect the public. Thank you. And so they suspend her because this sounds really tough. Why did they already know this? Because they were working with DEA already. This is not uncommon nowadays because the government has very concerned that we're having overdoses. Not only that, but once they can't get their Lortab anymore, they go to heroin. They go to things like that. So this has become a pretty urgent sort of deal. America's really kind of an unusual country. We're 5% of the world's population, yet we house 25% of the world's prisoners. We are 5% of the world's population, but we inhale 40% of the world's cocaine supply. We're 5% of the population, but we use about 1/3 of the drugs and create about 25% of the garbage. So we do things big, not just in Texas, but in America. So that's why this epidemic, if you go to another country, it's kind of like you've got to have an act of Congress to get a pain medication that's pretty strong. The practitioner that can cause imminent harm to the public, that language is, this is pretty much an extreme case.
So no due process?
Yes. Excellent question. We had, so no due process? Yes, there is. Within a couple of weeks of this notice, I have the right to go on behalf of my client and petition to say, no, this is not imminent harm. You're taking away somebody's license. It's not exactly a right. It's a privilege. But we have a right to be heard and say, this is, and I've had a few overturned, but they're not just going to do this imminent harm sort of standard unless they've got a lot going on. Unless they have a lot on you. So when you go to these hearings to see a probable cause hearing, that's what it's called, to see if your license should be suspended. Now, what I argue at these hearings, and we'll get into it this afternoon, is this person's an LVN, she's a CNA, she's an RN, and she's an APRN. What does this APRN issue have to do with all these other three? And then I'll show you how they tie it in together. So we've got, she asks, you know, the confused. Let's go back to the bond issue. unsecured bond, the attorney with a smile tells her, you don't even have to pay 10%. They think that you're such a low flight risk that, you know, but you can't write scripts, you can't leave the county. She's like rocked by the news. Like, what do you mean? Like, pretty much I'm out of a job right now. You have to be home by 10. You got to wear an ankle monitor. Takes maybe a day to get the ankle monitor. They have GPS on you. They know where you move. If you step out, the alarm goes off. They revoke your bond and you stay in jail until you go to trial. So that's how serious it is. Anybody who violates their bond conditions, they can have it and taken away. So the lawyers really have to be, just like nurses, educators. You have to give people anticipatory guidance about the system. It's just like being in the healthcare system when somebody has never been in it. They're scared, they're frightened, and what is our job? As attorneys, if you want to be a good advocate, you do like a good nurse and a good nurse practitioner. You explain what to, now they're going to ask you for certainty. Well, what do you think? My cancer's curable? You know, there's things you can't answer, and you just say, look, this is a process. We're going through it. I'm going to be with you. And a lot of it is a lot of hand-holding. And he tells her, don't talk to anybody, because anybody can become a potential witness. Ex-husband, even your own present spouse can waive the spousal privilege because they alone hold it. So they can testify against you. Your children over a certain age can become a witness against you. Your neighbors can talk about certain patterns of behavior. And if your neighbor doesn't like you, they can say to the police anything. Oh, she came all hours of the night. She looked wild-eyed all the time, you know. Okay? And she was always in a bad mood. Well, if I saw 50 patients a day, I'm in a bad mood too sometimes, you know. So this is how, you know, we're going through this, the ankle monitor. And the ankle monitor, you know, what are we always taught in nursing school? You know, I used to teach LVNs, RNs. I'd say, if I can put a finger in those restraints or on this, I think we're okay, but you better do circulation checks. That was in the days before we didn't need restraints like an order every hour. The plot thickens. She's to surrender her license, and of course, this lovely lady here asked about, well, what about due process? She's stunned. Not only is she facing federal drug trafficking charges, but the BON has just taken away all her living, all in less than 48 hours. And she's still got to go find an attorney for the other problems she has, apparently, that she just got notice of. And the DEA and the U.S. Attorney, under a court order, have also seized her phone, laptops, and searched her home already. They've come back. They even take the child's laptop for school to go through it. And these are real things that happen. The Shark's Circle. While she was doing all of this and walking next door to her home, Action 13 News has cameras waiting for her. The reporter is asking her questions. Does she give out scripts like candy? And did she know that 2 people overdosed because of a script traced to her? Not to mention 24 cases of addiction reported because of her scripts. So now remember what she said in jail? Now with this, boy, it's a prosecutor's good case. She's in shock. The reporters ask her, are you prepared for this lawsuit with the cameras running and everything? She's like, which lawsuits? And then they'll go, Action 10 News. You know, they'll finish up with something good. She'll go, which lawsuits? You know, people at home are going, wow, and then they cut away, you know. They're always going to get, I've talked to the media a lot, and I do media, so I've always learned to say little short bites. People want, and lawyers always make the mistake of seeing these long sentences. They're only going to give you 5 seconds. So I'll say, my client maintains her innocence. We believe in the system. Okay, what did I just say? They're enough where I won't hit the editing board. Then they ask another question. I don't want to get on the editing chopping block. I want to make sure I get enough said without them editing me, because when they run back the tape, most reporters now, they have had what? And you're going, why are you talking about reporters? This guy's all over the place. Because it all blends together. They go back there and they edit their story, and they got an hour to get their story out. They're going to cut, blah, blah, lawyer. but they hear a good sound. She maintains her innocence, and we believe in the system. What have I done, right? I haven't broken any ethical rules or anything, but I'll say future jurors out there, hey, I remember that guy. He says she's innocent. Maybe she is. Right? So she's in shock. The reporter's doing all this stuff. Are you prepared for the lawsuit? She makes the cut for the 5 p.m. news. That's great. 2 million people from here to Rosenberg are watching, and they're calling her the Houston Cocktail Queen. Don't worry, the Chronicle's right behind you. It's going to be on chron.com in the morning. Don't worry. Much less the internet and the comments. I read the comments more than the news. You know, when they do a news story, I want to see what the people think about the news story. The internet is on fire by morning. Her child's being bullied. They're calling her the drug czar, all this stuff. Your mommy sells drugs. You know? So the comments on the reporter on the internet are not kind either. And people are angry about this, you know, especially the family members, the neighbors, the people that have suffered because of this. It may not have been directly from her script, but they had access to them. Pulling out of the driveway the next morning, worse comes, you know, she retrieves her car, pulls it out, more reporters are waiting. A large sheriff comes up to her and says, are you Pat Smith? You're served. Boom. Okay? When you file a lawsuit, and we'll talk more about this, you got to get proper service. Some guys will call me and say, hey, Joe, I'm going to sue your client. Will you accept service? Absolutely not. Oh, come on, man. No, why am I going to give you and accept service? Then the lawsuit starts. Go pay the $180 for the sheriff to go serve it, and then we have 20 days to answer. Okay? But the language in the law says you have 20 days after the first Monday to answer this. People just say, what did you just say? In other words, you got 20 days, more or less, to answer a lawsuit and say, I didn't do anything. Now, this is the civil lawsuit. So now we have criminal charges. She's being sued civilly, and she's got the BON on her. Who are you going to call? Right? She has better call Saul, you know. She has no idea what all this means, you know. She's holding a thick document that's saying all these horrible things about her, that she's a drug dealer, that she's known as the cocktail queen, that she has taken away and robbed people's life, their future, their youth, because of her indiscriminate giving away of drugs like candy. And they're suing her for $5 million. Why? Because a couple of people are really damaged from this. The loss of income, the loss of potential, blah, blah. You know, the lawyers are going to throw everything in there. Now, do they know if she has an insurance policy? A lot of people say, if I carry an insurance policy, I'm a target. We as nurse practitioners pretty much have to if we participate. And CMS and everything, we have to. But I say all RNs, LVNs need to carry that coverage. Why? Because you get a lawyer. They have a duty to defend if it's covered. If it's intentional acts, if you assaulted somebody, if you hurt somebody, coverage may not be there, but at least you have a lawyer that you can talk to. She barely gets to the car, slams shut the vehicle, as reporters film this too. She's, you know, driving there. She pulls up like to a mall or something, you know. Her husband says, I'm going to take care of the child this week till things cool down. You're all over the internet. Reporters have even called me. You're under the microscope. She's just too beat up right now to even put up a fight. So, the civil suit is from Smingleberry, and they're on TV all the time. They're the Texas Hammers. And the lawsuit alleges negligent medical and nursing practice by she. They're also suing Dr. Smith because they figure he's a doctor. See, lawyers have not figured out about what nurse practitioners are. 90% of lawyers out there really don't understand that you all have policies and all this stuff, which is good for us. And really, here in Texas, if you work in an ER, you're pretty much bulletproof. They have to show intentional acts that you did something on purpose. So some of these laws, the lawsuits are very hard to prove, but lawyers are looking at clients that either had potential future loss of earnings or that were making money, and that way it's not just the wrongful death cap, which is like $1 million and change, plus the consumer price index. It's also future wages and damages. If somebody got Lortab, they stayed anoxic, they say, well, now they're going to be in a vegetative state. The care plan's $40,000 a year minimum for the nursing home, and their life expectancy chart, they're 35, they OD, they're going to live 40 more years, 40 times that. That's where they're getting these astronomical figures. because they're already anticipating how much that this is worth. Now, if you don't have that much insurance, they just drive the insurance up and then get a judgment on you. How much is a judgment worth? Charmin, if you don't have assets. They'll just put the lien on anything you have, and when you sell a house, they get the money from that, and they're good lawyers, they'll do that, and we'll get into all that. But the firm represents dozens of people who are saying they're addicted. Now, the courts are kind of split on this right now and saying, because you know what's coming. Lawyers are going to start advertising and saying, have you been addicted to Lortab? Have you been addicted to OxyContin? And you may be eligible for compensation. That's coming, okay? Not only that, but smart lawyers that handle whistleblower and ketam cases and that have pharmaceutical reps, they're going to do like OxyContin had to pay millions a few years back because of false advertising. Sometimes when you use an off-brand use of a drug, the Medicare, Medicaid wants their money back from the pharmaceutical company, because they'll say, look, you didn't tell us and you didn't tell FDA that this was so highly addictive. Further, that firm represents dozens of people. The firm finishes by stating that all of the patients will also be filing complaints with the BON, DEA. So now she just doesn't have one complaint, she's going to get a ton of complaints. The way the board starts looking at it is, okay, we dismissed one. Maybe I get lucky. Then there's another, and another, and another. Sometimes I'll argue, these are cumulative. Let's all do a global sort of case. That's what they do with class action lawsuits in a way. It's not like a class action, but if I've got 20 complaints on the same practitioner, I tell them, let's just do it all globally together. And if people want to attend, it's a public hearing. I get it. They're entitled to be there. They're part of it. So she's looking at a lot of things, and she profited from being a pill mill owner.
I have a question.
Sure.
We're talking about insurance. Most employers provide the APRNs with malpractice insurance. Is there a specific number that the APRN should be covered, like like your car insurance, you have like 50 and 25? I mean, or if there are specific numbers, and should the APRN have their own policy in addition to what the employer has provided for them?
So the question is, how much coverage should I have, and should I take the employer's coverage, and maybe I should have my own?
Yes.
Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, let's think about it this way. We have become a very good commodity to insurance companies. And when I got out 18 years ago, I was making $5 more an hour than I did as an ICU RN. Now I would be, if we put pencil to paper, making 30–40% more as a starting MP. So, if you made 70 in the units, you're going to make, if you negotiate right, even a starting right now is making between 90, 100, 105, 110. It depends. Now, as far as your answer, the answer to your coverage, it's not set in stone, but you have to carry certain limits, especially with CMS. Some applications, and especially CMS and stuff, are asking like 600,000, a mil. As far as coverage, I would go at least 300, 600,000, or maybe a million, 3 million. Okay, and I would make sure that on the coverage you have it for administrative hearings. You have it in case you're sued, so you have a lawyer go with you to depositions, and you have to look at it. I don't endorse any policies, but some of them that are out there are like CMS, NSO, those coverages, I would just tell people to get them. As far as just having your employer get it for you, what if you get fired? What if you get quit? There's a conflict, because I used to represent the insurance companies, and I really didn't like it as much as representing the individual. I'll tell you why. Because, first of all, let's zoom back. As lawyers, we are looking at, who am I representing? The client, the insurance company, or the employer, or all three? Who's my devotion to? Well, you swore an oath you would zealously defend your client. It gets hard because who's paying the bill? The insurance company, okay? Just like an HMO or something, we're not going to pay for the gorillacillin. You need to try amoxicillin first. Same thing with insurance companies. If you quit and you go somewhere else and maybe the whole practice got sued, you're a rogue out there. Even though the tail coverage may cover you, on the tail end, get you in there, the simple answer is you're still an ex-employee, so you're the first one, if I'm suing the practice, that I want to go talk to. Why'd you leave? I really don't want to talk about it. Bingo! Then I know, boy, you hated that collaborating physician, you know. The other APRNs may have been really mean, you know, or whatever. So it's good to have your own coverage because that coverage may terminate when you leave. You have to really look at your insurance coverage.
Yeah,
That's like a whole...
Isn't there like occurrence and non-occurrence-based policies? So how do you know which one to...
Well, you ask what they cover and make sure that you talk with the insurance when you get covered by them. You ask them. Occurrence-based or not, claims made, those are different coverages. I mean, lawyers I took voluntarily a year of insurance law, and I don't know it all. You have to ask and that's a whole day seminar, and I don't want to get bogged down too much on the insurance, but I do recommend having your own insurance coverage. It's worth it. Even a part-time policy, something that you can have mobile with you. If you leave a practice, it can become complicated. Okay, so that's why I would say it's important to have your own separate coverage. Now they're going to tell you that you don't need your own coverage. We got you covered.
Right.
You know, yeah, until things go south, or until, like your example, maybe there might be some prescription things, and then they're going to run for cover and cover themselves and point to you. And you need your own insurance policy and your own lawyer to represent you zealously. Luckily, she still has some malpractice coverage, so she's going to get probably coverage for 2 out of 3 of her problems, which is the civil and the administrative. She doesn't have money on the criminal lawyer, but small world, and it does happen like that. They'll say, I remember that public defender, you know, Lemansky or whatever, and say, you're in good hands because the federal public defender is good. Now, what would a case like this, some people ask, if somebody was representing them privately, in a case of this magnitude, if I took on all 3, if I did the civil, criminal, and board case, it would probably be about a $50,000 to $100,000 retainer to start. Why? You're looking at about 500 to 100 hours just to start. Just to start. This is going to be a 1,000-hour case. So, you know, some lawyers charge a lot more. Some lawyers charge $500,000, $1 million to like a doc in a situation like this. And they'll say, why are you charging so much? Because I'm worth it. You know, a lawyer is not a lawyer that's not a lawyer. You know, you want to save money, you know. I had somebody the other day, I won't mention their name, they said, I got a complaint for the board, and they said, I want you to represent me free. Well, that's not going to happen. But what they were brazen enough to do was they came and left the complaint off at my office, and they just dumped it there. Well, as a lawyer, I have to do something about it. So what I did was I sent it back to her certified, sent the $5 and said, please do not send unsolicited documents, especially originals, to my office. We discussed it on the phone. I cannot represent you. Contacted another attorney of your choice immediately. And then I called her, documented the call, and I even put an affidavit in the file that I called her. But people get so desperate that they want to force you to help them. You know, and I said, you know, a lawyer makes his money off of, why don't you go ask a heart surgeon, give me a cabbage free. He'll laugh you out of the OR. You know, tell the anesthesiologist, can you waive that anesthesiology fee? So we all have to make a living, you know, and I just tell people, I'll work with you, put you on payment plans, but not a free lunch around here, especially this. And a wise old attorney told me, before you start getting really emotionally invested, you remember that those people's problems are their problems. They put themselves in the scenario. Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't, but they put themselves in a situation they should not have. So before we start, you know, tear jerking, we need to look at the situation and say, how much would it cost realistically? At least for a federal indictment, it's about 30, 40, 50 grand. Because if you're prepared to go to trial, that's why they say, let's not make a federal case out of this, because it is very involved. Something like this without insurance is probably over $100,000 for everything or more. So she has no money, so she's got the insurance. And our mission today, 3 points, as I said, was criminal, civil, administrative. And what we're looking at as the analysis is you'll learn about the justice system. The fact pattern took us a break because it's that involved, that in depth. That's why this is a day-long process. And you'll learn about not just the criminal justice we've learned a little bit about. We're going to go through the civil proceedings on a medical malpractice personal injury case. and the board, and how a hard-won license, an NP cert, can be quickly lost. Okay, so we're okay on time. APRN morning session, criminal and civil actions and the fundamentals. Law and order. We're going to be talking about that. We've given you the fact pattern. We've given you what this person has gone through just to make a bond. We've seen and lived through what this person is like coming home, how it impacts the family, how she's having to go through to talk to a lawyer, and learn to watch out for early signs of trouble with the law. That's what I want you guys. You brought up an excellent question. And you're not on camera, by the way. So, and we'll leave your name out of it. Anybody who has that, we'll call you Miss Jones. And you'll go, my name is Miss Jones. No. We'll just say, anybody has a question, I'll repeat the question. That way we have it on film there, but you remain anonymous. Because we want to have an open dialogue, okay? And we want to see early warning signs. It was an excellent question. Earlier during the break, we had a question on whether if a doctor is doing the refills, is it okay for me to see the patient? You have to have the right documentation. I would always recommend my clients that are doctors to say, come on, man, every 3 months you got to evaluate, you got to do the liver enzymes, you got to counsel them on watching sedative, hypnotic, opioid combinations. You've got to talk to them. You've got to document that you educated them on the risks and hazards of becoming addicted. The nurse being charged with a criminal offense. Okay, we've learned a lot so far, but the consequences of a criminal conviction for a licensed healthcare professional can be devastating. Earlier this morning, I said a criminal lawyer just doesn't get it if he hasn't had a healthcare license. He just doesn't get it that a deferred adjudication, and I'll teach you all what pretrial, deferred, and a final conviction are. He doesn't get it that a deferred adjudication on a drug charge, you're still going to get revoked or suspended. You're going to sit on the pines and you're not going to do anything for years. It may be 5 years or never that you get it back. If you get hit with one of these kind of charges, even if you're not convicted criminally and the board finds that you gave it out like candy or didn't make an individualized plan of care, you're never going to get back your NP to prescribe. You might get it back to do non-invasive stuff after 5 years and a lot of, great letters, but you're pretty much done. I'll be lucky to get back your RN license because, as we'll learn in the afternoon, it's not the crime or the offense, it's the trust level. Because we know that we have an 86% approval rating in the United States. We're the most trusted profession in the U.S. Lawyers, not so much. We're right above bankers and politicians. I'm very proud to say that. 14%, I think, or something. Approval rating.
It's about used customers.
Yes, and it's imperative that legal counsel is obtained as soon as possible because, as we know, things happen so fast. While she was in jail, they already have her in the Suburban. They already have her on the phone. They already have a jailhouse snitch. And they say in the jails, snitches get stitches, but everybody turns on everybody because they want to save time on their sentence. Without representation, the nurse may be at a distinct disadvantage and surrender her rights, where otherwise the nurse might have not known existed. You mean I didn't have to say anything on the phone? I didn't know that it was being recorded. Can they use that? Yeah, they can, maybe. So how criminal charges can affect the nurse's license. The charges and the process of being accused and going to trial or reaching a plea agreement and possibly being convicted carry great weight in the state board determining whether to discipline a nurse. A dismissal versus a pretrial, and I'll talk more about the pretrial diversion versus a deferred versus a final conviction. There's night and day. Plus, even if you walk on a criminal charge and you're not guilty or they decide not to prosecute you, that doesn't mean, like we heard our example of Rocky, say Rocky was a nurse and I got him all, I'll tell you all about the Hatchet case real quick. I had a guy that miraculously he found his wife in flagrante with another person and got jealous and got a hatchet and stabbed the guy in the manubrium, right? Remember from our AMP days, Okay, well, he had a good lawyer, so he only got him deferred misdemeanor charge for the assault, not even attempted murder, he was good, the lawyers always like to joke, a great lawyer knows the law, but a fantastic lawyer knows the judge, okay? So, and the prosecutor. So he got him a misdemeanor. Well, this guy didn't report it to the board. Have you been arrested in the last whatever? And there was no fingerprinting back then. Said no, 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 and kept going down the road. And then he got a DUI. And then he got a little possession, a little pot. That got dismissed. But he didn't tell him anything about the arrest. Because now they ask, have you even been arrested? So when we went over there, even though he walked all these charges, even though he only had a misdemeanor, they were so angry. Not because of the charges themselves, because he lied. They said, you know, son, you go into somebody's house, there's 50 hits of Lortab, there's OxyContin, there's MS-Con. You're going in there and the guy's got $500 under the mattress or in a coffee can. And we're supposed to trust you and you lie to us. What are you doing to your patients out in public is how they see it. So you're going to get in that mindset and say, the trust level. You are going into people's houses. You are dealing with their most trusted affairs. They're telling you the most intimate things, and we're to trust you. So even if you walk on criminal charges, you can have devastating results. So lawyers that say, well, Joe, I cut a good deal. Now I'm sending them to you. And I'm like, I wish you had called me before you made that plea, because now you kind of committed malpractice, and I'm trying to help you out that the nurse doesn't come after you, because you got them a deferred on a drug charge. They're still going to have to stay out at least a year or two. And don't even get me started with TPAP-N. And the board even asks you to do lie detector tests. Even though they're inadmissible, some nurses don't know that you can say no to the lie detector, and they take it. And then they ask you about all this other stuff that has nothing to do with the case, and they give you a lie detector test. They can do that. Most lawyers do not understand the ramifications of cutting that good deal. And most attorneys are not accustomed to representing medical professionals. They don't get that losing a thumb drive for 400 patients on there, what that means if it's not encrypted. Google's a great start, like I always say, but what type of law they practice, most people don't know. A lawyer is a lawyer is a lawyer. A state bar is a great way to go. Look at what lawyers handle. Look at their areas of practice. Look at their website. Look at what they handle. You don't want an attorney handling car wrecks, handling your state board case. So the importance of legal counsel and the effects on your criminal charges. A nurse must hire an attorney who's familiar with criminal practice, criminal procedure, as well as the repercussions of doing a plea agreement on your license. If you get certain convictions, whether they're deferred or straight community supervision, you require a mandatory suspension. So let's break that down. Pre-trial is like this. Here is a final conviction. Here's a plea. Here's a finding of guilt. If you get a pretrial diversion, the next best thing to that is getting a not guilty, or or somebody saying, we're not going to prosecute you at all. It still shows the arrest when they run your background check. So you have to get that expunged or non-disclosed, depending on the offense. So it's still going to show when they run your background check, they're going to show an arrest. So even when they process you, they're going to show that. If you get a pretrial diversion, they give you a strong kind of admonitions of the things admonishments of what you need to do and complete. If you do all that, that's finding of guilt is held up in the air and suspended. If you complete everything, they dismiss it. But you're still going to have to get it erased. And you're still going to have to report to the board. Why? Because it's an arrest. They ask you, have you ever been arrested since the last time you renewed? So you have to say yes. Sometimes it's so aggravated they can say you're tampering with a government document when you don't tell them the truth, because that is a government document. Some agencies require on conviction that the license be revoked unless the licensee can make a showing that it's in the best interest of society not to do so. That's where you get an attorney to argue, and you bring in 20 letters and, priests and neighbors and ex-patients with their name, kind of just their initials, and saying what a good person. I mean, these are the kinds of advocacy things you show the board. Questions? Felony convictions or even good deals often lead to automatic revocation. It's imperative that a licensee charged with a state or federal offense seek professional counsel like that, because anything you do. I had a guy who wanted just out of jail. He got arrested for going to his girlfriend's house. He still had a key. He used the key. She says he didn't have the right to enter. And, well, he took a couple of things out of there. They got him for breaking and entering, not just trespass. So he's facing a felony burglary charge of a habitation. He's an LVN waiting to take his RN exam, his finals. And so his lawyer comes in there and goes, look, he goes, if I don't get out of here, I've worked so hard for my RN, I'm going to flunk. He says, okay, we'll sign these deferred papers, which is going to go on my record? No. Can I become a nurse? Yes. Told him that. Sounds good. Signed the papers, pled. And when you go do a colloquy or a plea, the judge says, I have these papers in front of you that you initialed. You have a right to a speedy trial. You have a right to confront witnesses. You have a right to plead not guilty. You're pleading guilty because you are guilty. No other reason. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. And now I also see these other initials of admonishment that honor about this date that you said that you entered this house without permission, and that constitutes breaking and entering, possibly punishable by 2 to 20 years. You understand that? Yes. Is that a yes? Yes. Okay. And then you also signed this judicial confession. You're saying you're guilty. You are guilty. No other reason but that. Nobody's put any pressure on you to plead guilty. You're pleading guilty of your own reason. You're satisfied with counsel. Any other questions? No. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and approve the deal that I don't have to approve it, but the prosecutor and your lawyer have agreed to this. I'm going to give you 5 years probation, but I'm going to have this sentence hanging over your head. You may be sentenced to 5 years in prison if you do not comply with the conditions, and standard conditions are anger management, all these classes, all this stuff, yada, yada. Do you understand all this? Yes. Okay. All right. Take care of yourself. Next case, please. That's how fast it goes. Okay? Now the lawyers explained all this. They've gone in a back room, done the paperwork. The guy, all he knows is he's going to take his finals. Okay? He relied on the attorney's advice. No way. Board said you can't sit for NCLEX. No. And you're not going to be able to for years. And so then he came to me and I said, you pled. He goes, well, what was I supposed to do? I was going to flunk out of nursing school anyway. I was in between a rock and a hard place. I had a key. She didn't change the locks. And I go, yeah, but, you know, they overcharged it. It should have been trespassing, which was a misdemeanor, or disorderly conduct. They gave you a burglary. Now you have a felony. On the matrix, what is the matrix? The matrix is like offenses that you have on the board. Are y'all hot in here? Do we need to modify the temp? Okay. So the matrix tells you what offenses: injury to a child, injury to the elderly, assault of your spouse, these kinds of things. Forget it. I mean, they're very frowned upon. Public lewdness. I had a guy urinating in public. They gave him indecency and public lewdness. He was just pulling over the road, checking the tires, you know, but he was out there public urination. So that can be considered indecent exposure and a sexual crime. So it depends how they plead it. The guy was just trespassing. He had a key. They had just broken up. She was spiteful. She wanted to get him, and she said, I'm going to get you no matter what I do. And so that's why she got the breaking and entering. And then so we, you know, had to look at it that way. A qualified attorney should be retained. I don't know what I would have done. That's a hard case. I mean, if I had it, I would have told him, you're kind of in a rock and a hard place. I wouldn't advise to plead. I would have tried to really try to get a pretrial. A pretrial would have not been a conviction. You can get it expunged. And the difference between a deferred and a pretrial is you can legally deny that you even had the arrest if you get it expunged. And a deferred, you have to admit to the arrest. So there's some differences.
Would you ever go back to, this is just about this one case, but would you ever go back to the woman and say, you know, could you just reconsider? Do you really want to press these charges?
That's a third-degree felony, witness tampering. You're trying to influence a witness. No. It's an excellent question, Miss Smith. That's an excellent question because people do that all the time. They'll email, they'll text, and then they'll go to the prosecutor. And the prosecutor goes, you have a restraining order under the bond conditions. You used to have no contact with the victim. You just violated that. Pick him up. And then they have to wait in jail before they go to trial. And their bond is revoked. Now, you can try to get him out again and say he didn't understand and argue, but that takes time. This guy's finals were about to happen in a week. And so he did what the lawyer told him to do. The lawyer, in all good, candor, he probably Googled the BON site and said, yeah, it's not a final conviction, and misunderstood what all that meant. So that's the kind of real hard. These are types of charges. Healthcare is leading the pack. Healthcare fraud, we're having nurses pleading to $1 million in healthcare fraud or more because they were the DON of a home health. They get caught in a conspiracy, and even though they made $70,000, $80,000 a year as the BON, as a DON, they billed $3 million in Medicare. They had falsified 485s, the plan of care for that. I don't want to pick on home health, but it's one of the areas that I represent a lot. They have to eat the whole thing, and they have to plead to it, and they got to pay the whole thing back. Medicare, Medicaid, reimbursement issues, insurance fraud, theft and embezzlement, drug diversion is big. Drug possession, big. Obtaining controlled substance by fraud and deceit, calling in prescriptions and saying, with a handkerchief, this is Dr. Smith, and I want Lord Tablet. And you used to be able to do that all the time. You try to get a Lortab at Walgreens nowadays, and it's like, they're checking you out to be a donor for a kidney. Driving while intoxicated, they frown on those. We just had my little girl's class. Somebody is now blind because they got hit by a drunk driver. So we understand the intoxication assaults and all that. I've had people that have hurt people that have come back after 5 years, but they went through intense TPAPN or Texas Peer Assistance Program. Assault to a patient, terrible. You have people that are good people, you meet them, but they have them on video slapping a child to be quiet, and they had them on a nanny cam. It's hard to face these cases, and you have to remain non-judgmental and just say, look, it happened. I don't know what happened, but videos are very powerful. What are you going to do? You have the Janine Jones cases from when I started nursing, that they would mock codes on the poor kids and then come in and save their life. You have actual people that are serial killer nurses, that are out there. What happens if the APRN is arrested? We've gone through that. They read your rights. And this is more what I was talking about. It's not easy to ask for a lawyer and remain silent because these detectives are very crafty. They prey on your fears. They prey on the even letting you go to the bathroom or have a Coke or something. Even after you express your wish to remain silent, they can still say, "You sure you don't want to talk to me? I'll get you a Coke. You want some chips?" Mm-hmm. It's an acceptable practice for the police to play mind games. They have one guy I had one guy. I said, "You guys are so bad." They start laughing. The cops, they had one guy in a room and another guy, and so they all had ordered pizza. The policeman, so they pretended to walk by with a pizza, and the guy hadn't eaten in about 24 hours, and he walks into the cell next door, but said, "You okay?" And then he closed the door, kept walking. Well, he can't see. And then he eats and he comes back and he goes, "Well, your friend ratted you out for Domino's. He's already told me everything. So, he's not doing you any favors. He got fed and he got a Coke. What do you want to do? We got some more pizza in there." You go, "Well, it wasn't just me. It was him too." "Okay, sign this." And that's all above board. That's all above board. That is not coercion of a confession. They'll say, "Sign here. You've been read your rights. You're waiving these rights and you're doing it willingly, voluntarily." It's an accepted practice for them to do those games, and it's just cooperate. It'll go easier. The standard line is if you get a lawyer, things get complicated. Lawyers come in here and then just start. Why do you need one if you didn't do anything? Why do you need a lawyer? You didn't do anything. I believe in you. I know you tell the truth. Why would you need a lawyer? You're going to spend all these thousands of dollars when you can come home today. You can go home today to your children. I mean, wow, that's a compelling argument, right? And you haven't eaten in 12 hours, and what they gave you was just terrible. So crimes, misdemeanors, felonies, far more serious. I think you all are acquainted with that. The fines, the time, some other facilities, such as a mental health facility, is determined by the court. Nurses who get busted sometimes get a second chance and they could get put in a state abuse treatment facility. They call them safe Ps. They put them in there 6 to 9 months. It's the banana room, a rubber room, treat to get people sobered up. Often a first-time felon can be given a second chance by deferred adjudication, but again, the board frowns on it. You can lose and get your ticket punched for a while. The person can be placed on probation rather than given automatic prison time. But there's always a sentence over it. There's that sword of Damocles over you if you mess up. So the road to trial, let's say an APRN gets a criminal attorney and got indicted. Let's say we go back to Smith example. Your attorney will investigate and interview witnesses. I'll look at all the discovery. I'm entitled to go look at it, and they'll go, there it is. It used to be a warehouse full. Now they give it to you on a disc. It looks innocent enough. I open it up, 60,000 documents. So that's why the cases cost so much. We got a whole legal team working on them. We've got people summarizing all of this data that we have to get together. And in there somewhere, they've hidden stuff that might help me. 3 pages out of 60,000. But we've got to find them. The day of trial, both sides, when you announce ready and you go to trial, you thought it was bad when we were in the jail. When you go in there, there's 60 lawyers, there's 60 clients, and they're all rise. Everybody gets up. The attorney is, they call the case state versus, let's say it's a state case, state versus Flores, state versus Garcia, state versus Johnson, blah, blah, blah. Are you ready? And what does it mean to say ready? On docket calls on a Thursday or a Friday, that means Monday I'm ready to go to trial. This is like playing chicken. I may not be really ready to go to trial. I may have 4 trials that I announced ready for. And so then the defense, the DA may go, I'm not ready. I can't find my policeman, or they're not ready. Okay, I'll continue it on. But if you ask for a continuance, the judge, most of the time, no. How many times do you ask for a continuance? No. You're going Monday. We'll see you here Monday. Even when you go on Monday, let's say 10 out of most 90% plea. Let's say the 10% that don't, we show up on Monday, they'll take the oldest case and the most serious case first. If you got a capital murder and you got a drug case with a nurse, they're going to take the capital murder case because judges have to move their dockets. So then you get continued. Well, what happened? I had all my witnesses. I missed a day of work and my witnesses are mad and everything. I'm saying, tell it to the judge. I have to get ready. I spent my whole weekend getting ready. Cry me a river. I prepared for 4 cases. Maybe one's going. So I just say, it's the system. Well, the system is not good. No, say, yeah, tell me about it. But try being in a country where you don't have a trial by jury. Try being in a country that you don't have, that a judge or a panel of judges decides your fate, not your peers. Any pretrial motions, like we talked about, some of the people in here talked about that, suppressing the confession, suppressing the phone call, suppressing anything she said in the car. I could say it was a coercive environment. I could say that she was in there and she doesn't know she was being recorded. They hadn't Mirandized her properly. She had asked for an attorney. She invoked her right to an attorney again. Judge, the case law is clear. I've got to find cases and precedent that say that, and then I put them in a motion to suppress. And that's illegal search and seizure, eliciting, all that. The judge may rule for me. The judge may rule against me. Okay? Even if I get the even if I get the statement suppressed, the video suppressed, if I do a wonderful job on all that, they still have all the pharmacy records. And we can still bring the agents and they can still testify against her about what she said. So surprisingly, many nurses are not willing to come clean with their lawyer or themselves. Well, it's hard to come to terms with being, say that you're a pill mill or a drug dealer, or that you made these people go brain dead, or you got them addicted. It's hard to come to terms with that. But I want you to take a break, start thinking about arguing for or against sanctions from the board, start thinking about prosecuting, start thinking about defending, get some more coffee. We'll need it. It's time to find out what it really means to be a lawyer, part of a legal team, when we take a break. But questions?
Mr. Flores, so
Joe, please. My dad passed away in 2005. It was Mr. Flores.
Pretty much, what do you recommend at the very beginning? What she had done was just have kept her mouth closed, kept asking for her lawyer, would she have been, even though she was, guilty of doing what she did, but would she have been better off if she had just been quiet and waited for her lawyer? You just recommend basically just don't say anything, just wait to get legal representation, someone who knows what they're talking about.
Often it's a tough choice. It's a good question. The question is, should she have just remained silent and asked for a lawyer, kept invoking her lawyer? The hard and fast answer is yes. The reality is, some people have never gone to jail. Most people never have. So when you're fearful of going into that den of just hell, they don't want to go there. So,
lawyer on standby.
wow. How many nurses? Here's the deal. I go to the World Series game. I loved it. Not the real one. We were at a neighborhood bar. I'm there with 3 doctors. 2 of them say, I hate lawyers, but we like you because you were a nurse. You're a nurse practitioner. You're kind of one of us, you know, kind of. And the other guy goes, no, you guys are dumb. Every healthcare practitioner needs a lawyer friend because we've been taught subjective, objective, assessment, plan, hate lawyer. And so we don't know any lawyers. So when you ask, what lawyer do I know? And they charge so much, I mean, I don't even know what to begin. I mean, there's not even a phone book in here and they took away, so I can't Google to find a lawyer. I'm like, you know, so that's the thing is I always tell every healthcare practitioner, find a lawyer friend. I don't care if they're still a 3rd-year student, they know where to find somebody who's a lawyer. Find a cousin that has a lawyer. Somebody in the family always has a lawyer. You know, Japan makes engineers, we make lawyers, you know.
You want the right lawyer, you don't want just any lawyer that takes you down the wrong path.
That's right, and that's the tough decisions, you know. You need to have that connection. You need to have the people that you trust. And there's nurse attorneys out there that are excellent, you know, out in the whole state, you know. I handle mainly about Houston down, but there are people, Amarillo, Lubbock, there's people all over that do them. But the catch is, if you're facing criminal charges, you have to have one that's done criminal, federal, state, and those because, and I'm giving myself a plug, there's people that do it, but to do it, it's kind of like an Iron Man defense because you got to be looking at all these, and that's why I want to give you, it's basically the day in the life of my practice is what we're doing here today on one case.
If you have insurance, your own insurance outside of your employment, then do they tell you who your lawyer's going to be, or do you get a choice?
Excellent question. The question is, if I have my own insurance, do I get the lawyer of my choice? The answer is maybe. Sometimes in the insurance contract, they say we get to choose. Sometimes if you're insistent, you can sue your own insurance company on a first party sort of insurance fraud standard. You can sue your own insurance company for not going along. You paid good premiums and you wanted your lawyer. Sometimes, like I've represented people on TMLT, Texas Medical Liability Trust, doctors, and they'll say, you pay a 10% deductible, you can have him. And they pay it. They'll say, I want you, because if they give me lawyers that I don't know, are they for me or for the insurance company? Are they for me or the hospital? I want somebody that's there for me, and if you screw up, I'll report you to the bar. You know, I mean, you're going to be held to a standard, even though the hard and fast rule is you fight for the client. But it's not that easy. Who's paying the bill? So it depends. Most insurance companies will pay up to about $180, $200 an hour. But you're taking into account your paralegal, you're taking into account your clerk, you're taking into account a second lawyer who's helping you. So sometimes instead of making 180, you're really making maybe 80 or 90. If you're a good businessman. It depends how much you're doing it all alone, and you can't do it all alone. These cases are very complicated. You need a legal team like the legal team I got here today. I never get so much help. But half this room's going to help me. And half this room's going to be against me.